Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counterclipping show number 174 for May 27th, 2024. I want to welcome everybody. Hope that everybody is having a good Memorial Day weekend. So the interesting thing that I was fumbling with when the camera turned on here was what we're drinking tonight. We are clipping War in Europe as part of my project to get all the SPI stuff punched, clipped, and organized. We are sorting that. I might talk about this some more, sorting those into cube for meat trays with the special dividers. I'm thinking I might be able to get this entire enormous game into 3 of those, but we'll see if that actually pans out or not. Now, the hilarious thing was what I was going to be drinking tonight was this delightful Jack Daniel's single barrel rye. However, when I went to open it, the cork busted in half. This is fixable, but not in a minute and a half. So instead, we are drinking this stuff. This is Ohio whiskey. This is made by a distillery in Columbus called Middle West Spirits. I've actually done the distillery tour there, and it's very good. Unfortunately, let's say they haven't maintained their quality standards over the last couple of years, and everything I've had from them lately has been liquefied ass. So not recommended that you go run this stuff down anymore. This is, however, bottled at 46%, and it's pretty good. It is made entirely from Ohio wheat. So once again, thanks everybody for showing up tonight. Our topic is American Wars. And just to give everybody, it seemed a appropriate topic for Memorial Day, but just to give everybody a warning, there's 3 kind of big ones that we won't be discussing tonight, and it's the 3 that you could probably guess. The American Civil War, which we talk about plenty on this channel and this show, and the 2 world wars, World War I and World War II. We're going to talk about other conflicts that the United States has been involved in and that there are games about. And there's at least one that I'm not sure there's any games about. So I'll be asking questions about that. I'll go through that little more comprehensive list as we get further into the show here. So once again, thanks everybody for coming. And if you haven't done so already, please thumbs up the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not done that already. I want to give a special shout out to, first of all, the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, without whose assistance we would not be able to keep doing this. So thank you, patrons. There were new patrons last week. I don't have any new ones this week, but I will put the ticker up, which does have an updated link to the Ardwulf's Lair Discord community. So hop on there if you're not already in. And of course, a shout out to our friends at Noble Knight Games, from who is the sponsor of the Counterclipping show, and from whom we will hear a little bit later on. So before we go any further, let's do and there's a bunch of other links to support the show and the channel in the video description, including the Noble Knight affiliate link. I don't have an update on the campaign for the finished trilogy right now, but I might by next week. We will see. So we do have the first of the 3 games in our possession already. So as far as I'm concerned, we have at least 33% as of this moment. So in any case, Jacob Guernsey, before I miss this question, I will advise you to go to the Guard. If we're talking about Wargames, the only real game in town is the Guard Tower. There's 2 locations, one out east and one out west. The western location has recently moved. The eastern location is right off of 270, the loop highway that runs around Columbus. You can go into either one of those, and they ought to have a fairly decent selection of newer GMT stuff, maybe some stuff from Compass and or DVG. But before we go any farther with that, let's say hello to Bayonet Brant from the Armchair Dragoons, Charles Latour, Clark Commander 1983. Mark, thanks for stopping by. Daniel Silverthorne, David Zell, Grunyard, Rich Groucho Marks, Half-Ass Gaming. John, thanks for stopping. Jacob Guernsey, Joe Faust from sunny Northeast Ohio. We are not very far apart anymore. Joe Mentum, John Longshore is here. John Mogg, John Nolan, Joseph Green is here. Mean Joe Green, as we're calling him here. Kyle Harris, Mark McNair, Mr. Mark Herman is here. Mark, thanks for stopping by. Matt Van Wielden, Meandering Mike, Michael Levenzini, Mo Romaniak, Palmer Eldridge, Paul Dangle, Paul Sin, Paw, Philip Musket, Rob Moffat, Robert Hassler, welcome to the show. Rogue77, Ryan Heward, hope that I did better this time. Stacking Limit, Stigler is in the house. Tailwind, Todd Cox, Tony Mammal, William Bird, and Winterson. And I do not see the legend himself, but he will presumably be along at some point. So I'd like to welcome once again everybody to the show. Now, an amusing thing that somebody over at the Armchair Dragoons, and I guess I mean Brant is probably responsible for this, has put together these hilarious, nobody thinks these are as funny as I do, probably, But I think they're pretty funny. These hilarious Ardwulf's Lair off-topic bingo cards. I have thrown a link to those in the chat. So I am not entirely unpredictable in this respect. So you may decide to go pick a bingo card and keep track of it as you see fit. But those are in the chat. We are having a corner issue with this particular counter. That is why I keep this guy handy, because, yeah. So I know basically where this copy came from, and the corners were trimmed on it, but they were trimmed almost undetectably with scissors. So there's the occasional counter with a not exactly flat side on it that needs to be clipped on a different clipper. And I haven't clipped every single compartment successfully either. So there will be a video on this when it is ready to make a video about it and about how I'm storing this thing, which as you can imagine is a fairly significant project. The other thing that that I got this when I got this game, it was already punched, right? And I never did finish the rather large task of going through it to verify completeness. So since I'm engaged in this SPI thing now, and we all know where that's eventually going to end up, I am checking to see if all the counters are here so far. Thus far, I am missing one German air point counter, and that is it. So hopefully that may still turn up. There's a lot of counters to go through here. So the legend himself, Fucko, has arrived. So welcome back to the show. So Stegler, of course, is cranky once again, the crankiest man in wargaming, or in stiff competition for the crankiest man in wargaming, as the case may be. So we do also, I forgot to actually set this up. We do have a GMT Games update to go through. So we're going to start the show, more or less. We're going to start the show with that. As soon as I do the screen share here, which I did not do to set the show up. There we go. All right, so this came out late last week. Let's see if, yeah, that actually works a little bit better. Okay, cool. Cool. All right, so GMT update. There's a bunch of interesting stuff happening here with the GMT update this week. So we will get to that stuff. So once again, as usual, if you want to read this entire thing and get absolutely every juicy detail squeezed out of it, go ahead and go over to GMT's website and do so. I will be hitting the highlights. And by highlights, of course, I mean the things that are interesting to me. So one of the things that they're putting on P500 this week, and we'll talk about this when we get to it, is this new game from Richard Garfield. So let's we'll once again talk about that, and the new book from Mark Herman. So we'll talk about that as well. There's a new GMT Talk, which looks like it has Gene on it in this particular case. That's available over on GMT's YouTube site, and I think they may have it available as a podcast as well. I haven't listened to it as a podcast, even though I probably ought to, because I need podcast material. I've got plenty of podcast material. All right, so they're shipping stuff. We'll get to that. Not there yet. Games that could use orders: Imperial Fever, Time of Crisis Deluxe. I actually have thought about ordering that, even though I've played it and wasn't absolutely crazy about it. Lenin's Legacy, which I think a better title would be Red Legacy, but maybe that is a stereotypical title. That looks pretty interesting. That's an Alex Knight game, as I recall. That's almost hit its number. A bunch of these other ones are also fairly interesting. Coast Watchers, that's Volko's new game. I'm a bit shocked that hasn't made it yet, but it hasn't been up very long either. There's a new 18XX game, and Napoleon in Egypt, which is a point-to-point card-driven game. And when I say that, it's basically exactly what I'm saying. It's a traditional point-to-point card-driven game, but it's pretty small footprint. That's an interesting game that I think people should be paying a little more attention to. There's new stuff on Rally the Troops. Let's hope so. He's definitely more competent. I can vouch for that. Is it? Am I mixing that up? Maybe I'm screwing that up. So I haven't heard this, but I didn't order it because I have the original. So I'm not in the loop on that. Also, Volko's game Hunt for a Blackbeard is going to be up on Kickstarter real soon now. That's coming from Fort Circle. So stay tuned. There'll probably be some news on that. before too long. Here's some more GMT1, GMT development updates from Jason Carr. This looks like there's some stuff on France 40 here. There's new and updated vassal modules. Summary of changes and play. Okay, we don't need to look at that. All right, so some designer interviews, including some stuff that Gene interview that we just mentioned, as well as John Butterfield was interviewed by Pushing Cardboard, Joe Dewhurst by the Player's Aid, Volko was interviewed by Harold Buchanan. I assume that's Harold Buchanan. And Legendary Tactics got Volko and Matthias Kramer. And apparently I'm wrong about the Alex Knight thing. Alex Knight's game must be a different thing. Apparently so. So Matthias Kramer is apparently the designer of Lenin's Legacy. He's the designer of the very promising looking Weimar game that came out from Capstone Games, which is right in Ohio, as I think I've mentioned before. So GMT links and stuff. All right, so and we're just gonna pop all these open. I'm not gonna pop open Empire of the Sun. If you don't have Empire of the Sun already, unless you've already played it and decide that you don't like it, you should play it. It's a classic game. It is one of those things that I think all wargamers probably ought to play. And maybe you don't need to like it, but it's a brilliant game. I think one can credibly make a case that it is the finest game on its topic, and it is not a topic that is exceptionally obscure. So we should definitely get in on that action if you don't have a copy already. I already have a copy. So the other three things, let's talk about Founders of Ravik first. Now, this leads the update with this Founders of Ravik thing from designer Richard Garfield. If you don't know, Richard Garfield is the designer of Magic the Gathering. So let's just say Richard's doing okay, if you know what I'm saying. There are friggin' millions of these Soviet infantry divisions, by the way. So right there, it's like, yeah, all right. I mean, that's fine, but I don't care. I don't need to order this. And then I actually read what it is. This is a 3 to 5 player economic game of speculation and competition. So it's an economic game. We're not talking war games here, folks. But it is set in the universe of John Butterfield's Away Team, which is also coming from GMT in the not terribly distant future. And that is pretty interesting. I did know about Robo Rally. I'm not sure, and I probably did about King of Tokyo too. I have played Robo Rally. It's fun. It's not something I'm going to run down or play at a convention or anything, but it's a good game. And King of Tokyo is supposed to be good. I haven't played that, and I'm not terribly interested in it. I'd rather run down Creature That Ate Sheboygan, but that's reflective of my own tastes. So a Richard Garfield stepping onto John Butterfield's turf is very interesting, and I'm probably going to pay fairly close attention to this. I don't necessarily guarantee I'll end up buying it, but I will guarantee I'll end up buying Away Team. So next up is the Battle of Green Spring. I know nothing about this except that it is in the American Revolution, which is topical for this evening, and it is part of the Battles of the American Revolution series. That is I don't know who the game designer is, but the series designer is Mark Miklos. And if we get a decent look at that, no, we don't. So it's definitely part of the Mark Miklos series, and this one is designed by Mark Miklos as well. So we've got an interview with Mark Miklos around somewhere. I think we did it as part of Harold Buchanan's SD HistCon event at the Naval War College last year. Netrunner, I played the original Netrunner that Wizards did. I haven't played the other one yet. So yes, and Liz got to Kai Jensen and I think somebody else from GMT as well. So Liz's interviews are always worth a listen, regardless of who they're with. But Kai is a great interview as well. And you should check out Dan and I's interview with Kai, which has a just absolutely inspiring moment in it. And if you watched it, you'll know the moment I'm talking about. So in any case, the third interesting item here, all four are interesting. I just have Empire of the Sun already, is Wargames According to Mark. This is Mark's book. about game design and being a game designer, this is going to be an absolute must buy. This is a forward by the late Peter Perla, who just passed away not too long ago. This is, everybody should buy this. This has already made its number. It's clearly going to get pushed out and from Mark's updates on it, it looks like it's going to come pretty soon, or at least go to the printer pretty soon. So it is very interesting that it is a book that GMT is doing. Mark, is there a plan to do an audiobook version? I am wondering about that, if Mark is still here. So this looks super intriguing, and I am totally getting this. There's no hesitation in me at all about this one. So pay close attention to those. And the North Africa 40, which is an expansion for North Africa 41, is also in the pipeline as well here. All right, so we've talked about these things. Pretty exciting, considering all things considered. Considering there's a book and 2 games and then a reprint. That's we are above the standard excitement threshold for GMT updates. Let me put it that way. So GMT is removing the 3rd printing of Conquest of Paradise. That is a Kevin McPartland game. I have heard good things about it, but I have not played it. It's basically a Spore X game set in pre-modern Polynesia. I actually think that's pretty interesting. So ebook would be great too. I like actually reading stuff with ebooks, but I'm buying the physical one too. So who am I kidding? So we'll see if Mark wants to do an audiobook. And what level of coordination that would require with GMT, I haven't the vaguest idea. So I might be just saying that, and then there's some complication that makes it difficult. I don't know. Anyway. Next up, or being teased, let's put it that way, a 20th anniversary edition of a popular game. That could be all kinds of different things. It doesn't say whether it's a GMT game or not. A new World War II game from Mark Simonich. That might be the Gustav Line game. That's possible. A new game from Matt Calkins, who's done a couple of things for GMT. And a new Flying Colors game. And I will 100% buy anything that anybody wants to do in the Flying Colors series. There you go, Mark. So Paul Sin is voting for me to do the audiobook. So if you're interested in that, let me know. All right. So Red Flag Over Paris Censorship Tournament, which is on Rally the Troops. Finalists win a C3I magazine. SD HistCon, that's the virtual thing that's coming up June 8th. And then SD HistCon East, which is at the Naval War College and Museum in Newport, Rhode Island. Yes, you do need security clearance to go, but hopefully that's not a problem for this audience. And this looks like a just amazing event, to be completely honest. There's like a bunch of Revolutionary War battlefields there too that they like do a tour or two on. So it's going to be an amazing event. I haven't the vaguest idea. I will not be going. And then, of course, in a few weeks, we have Origins ahead of us, June 19th to 23rd, smack in the middle of downtown Columbus at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. So Enterprise Games will be repping GMT. Twilight Struggle will be inducted into the Academy of Adventure Games, Arts and Sciences. I have to be very careful about what I call it. And there'll be a large Twilight Struggle tournament and a panel discussion. Jason Matthews and Ananda Gupta will be there. I want to say that the Twilight Struggle tournament will be pretty close to us, but I'm not sure about that. Coming up in August also is Historical KC Fest, which I've heard is really good. But I have never been there, and for some reason, airfare to Kansas City is very expensive. It's drivable from Ohio. It's just it's a little bit of a long drive. 10th International Twilight Struggle Convention against the stunning backdrop of Kythera, Greece. Yeah, no kidding. I bet that's scenic. I won't be going to that either. Czech ConSimCon 2024 in Prague. That sounds pretty cool. World Series of Board Gaming, September 22nd to 26th. Not going to that. Here's an interview with Matthias Kramer with Legendary Tactics. And I'll also mention that go ahead and check out the C3I Ops Center for Roger's book, The Art of Roger McGowan, which is going to be kind of a part art book, part autobiography. So that's another must-have, in my opinion. We're going to need that. And there's a pre-order discount. So, and I got to order one of these throw blankets too. I absolutely have to. Bill Simone says he drives every year. It's a quick 11 hours. That's not bad. So Oh my goodness. Could you imagine how well this would go? All right. So a whole bunch of other stuff for miscellaneous GMT games, including a bunch of stuff as usual from the Board Games Chronicle. They're doing great work over there. Here's Rodney from Watch It Played talking about a guest of Robin. I can't remember. I know I've been told, but I don't remember how to pronounce it. So, all right. And then here we go to the juice here, the charging and shipping update. So shipping now, and by now we mean as of several days ago, a Just of Robin Hood and Bayonets and Tomahawks second printing. The next charges and shipments will be happening toward the end of June, and it includes the Downfall mounted map and 3-inch box, and I, Napoleon, Ted Racer's game, which looks very interesting indeed, and Virgin Queen second printing, which I may also end up picking up. If I had to guess, I would say that none of these three will be available at Origins, but that a Just of Robin Hood probably will be. So, all right. And then ahead of that, at the printer, but not having a ship date yet, includes Labyrinth, the Awakening second printing, Labyrinth the main game fifth printing, Labyrinth the 3-inch box, which I already got, Next War Iran, which if you're a fan of that series, you'll definitely want, Normandy 44 fourth printing, fabulous game, mounted map plus 3-inch box, also available. I am perfectly happy with my 1.5-inch box and non-mounted map. It handily fits comfortably into one counter tray, so I don't feel like I need a big fat box for that. Shelf space is at a premium here, folks. Also, Red Dust Rebellion, which is pretty exciting looking, and Skies Above the Reich second printing. Going to the printer late this month are Congress of Vienna, which I am highly interested in, and Wolfpack, which is also looks interesting, but which I will probably not grab immediately myself. All right, now, stuff in final art and proofing. This is the top category of pipeline that hasn't actually gotten a printer slot yet. So moving up to this category this month is By Swords and Bayonets by our very own grumpiest man in wargaming, Mr. Stigler. It's going to be a magnificent introduction volume to the great battles of the American Civil War system, which is very detailed. If you're not into a super detailed system, maybe you want to be wary, but I really like that system, so I'm happy to pick that up. Also, Commands and Colors Napoleonics Grand Battles, Comancheria second printing, fighting formations on the U.S. 29th Infantry Division. One wonders if maybe they talked to Joe Belkowski about that, since he's the official historian of the U.S. 29th Infantry Division. Holland 44 second printing, In the Shadows, which is a game about the French resistance, looks reasonably interesting. No Retreat, the Russian Front Deluxe third printing. That's a game I've mentioned before, I bounced off of. Wolfpack is from Mike Berticelli, as Meandering Mike points out. Good catch on that. Thank you. Where did I leave off here? All right. Also moving up to 1 to 2 months away from going to the printer is Seljuk Byzantium Besieged by our friend of the channel, Justagard, Justin Facino. This is about the Byzantines versus the Turks. I am definitely into this one. Also, all the Space Empire stuff, including the expansion, which I've been looking forward to for eons. The fifth printing of the main game, Close Encounters and Replicators, and Talon, which is a space combat game which can be linked to Space Empires. I don't think it's worth the trouble to do that personally, but if that's your jam, by all means, go ahead. The Battle of Manzikert is the campaigns. Where the hell's my mouse cursor? The campaigns surrounding the Battle of Manzikert are, in fact, the subject of Seljuk. But it is an operational game, not a battle game. Just bear that in mind. So, for shit's sake. All right, we got a spammer in here, folks. We're going to go over to Twitch and take care of that. So, there you go. Have a nice day. Anyway. The Talon expansion I thought was just like more ships. Am I wrong about that? I didn't really look at the expansion. Also, moving up to the 1 to 2 months away from going to the printer slot is the Battle for Normandy Deluxe Edition. I'm all into that too. I've had the game. I've done video on the game. I did get rid of the game because there was a new edition coming and it's kind of around the corner. I think there's an outstanding chance that we will see this year. Wouldn't necessarily bet money on it, but I think there's a good chance we'll see that this year. All right, and then in final art and proofing, now on, we're just going to talk about the games that have moved up into this category. The CNC Medieval expansion number 1. I don't have CNC Medieval. I've played it; it's good, but I don't need the game. Crossbanks Expressway, which actually looks super duper interesting. Francisco Gradial's game, Cuyas Regio, which I am all about. That is a 30 years war game. It is absolutely gorgeous and stunning, and I will be all over that. Infernal Machine, which is a game about building submarines in the U.S. Civil War. That actually, I was all prepared to say, yeah, I don't know, I don't need that. And then I watched an interview, and it's like, yeah, this actually looks interesting. So we might be taking a close look at that too. Thunderbolt and the Thunderbolt Deluxe Edition move up into this slot. I have been waiting literally decades for this, so I am obviously very happy. Mr. Mark Herman, who is here tonight, is one of the people. He and Alan Ray stepped up to complete this long cooking Richard Berg project. The Weimar Republic, which, having looked at the Weimar, and by looked, I guess I mean we set it up and tried to play it, and it's fairly complicated, so we couldn't figure it out at 8 p.m. after eating 10 pounds of prime rib. But Weimar from Capstone looks very interesting, and the Weimar from GMT actually looks a little less interesting now that I'm looking at it in comparison to the other game, but it is still an interesting topic, and I am still happy to give it a look. That's a good call. I'm not sure I realized this, Mike. Mike mentions that the Talon expansion has a solitaire and campaign system, so that is interesting. So Mark, of course, being very a modest individual that he is giving Alan Ray all the credit. But you know what, Mark? I don't really care as long as I get this thing after the 25 years that I've been waiting for it. So also coming up is Unconditional Surrender, third printing. Very good game. I have. It's not a perfect game. I have some issues with it, but it is a very strong game in many respects that I do recommend to folks. And then moving into the art department, which will be ready to move up again in 3 to 4 months. The new items here are 1833 NE, which is an 18XX game, and the Plum Island Horror expansion, More of a Bad Thing. Everybody that has played Plum Island Horror has said that it is terrific and fun. And I am very prepared to believe that. All right. And then in the art department, as in will move up sometime in 2025, includes 18 EUS, again, an 18XX game. Mark's very own Army of the Potomac. That's the follow-up to Rebel Fury. That is, that was a must-buy. Away Team, which is John Butterfield's solitaire sort of new take, let's say, on the same sort of thing that John did back in the late 70s, very late 70s, or very early 80s with Wreck and Voyage of the BSM Pandora for Ares magazine. Those are classics. They are actually pretty hard to get as well. So it's like a narrative solitaire game. Iggy Crichtel says he did not love the Plum Island Horror. You're like literally the first person I've seen that has said that. And Marty Sample says he thinks the GMT Weimar game will have a hard time topping the Weimar, the Fight for Democracy is the Matthias Kramer game from Capstone. I am also pretty impressed with it, and the chances of me playing that are super, super high because one of our local folks here in Northeast Ohio is a fan as well. So I'm positive it will get played sooner or later. In any case, Barbarossa Army Group South not moving this month, but that it's here at all is happy news, right? Caesar Rome versus Gaul 2nd edition and the update kit plus Decisive Action, which, as I recall, is Joe Chacon's game about modern U.S. versus Russia combat. So that might need some errata. I'm joking not about Joe's design acumen here, but about the state of the Russian military, just to make that clear. Fields of Fire, Volume 3, the Parachute Regiment, Firefight Tactical, Next War Supplement number 4, which I should probably buy. No Retreat 5, the Western Front, and the Battle for Sicily, which has been here for a little bit, but I'm happy to see that here too, because that is using the Battle for Normandy system, and I like that game, so I'm buying Sicily, and I'm even, just as interested in Sicily, so. This did go out of print. Whoops, the wrong one. Sorry, Marty and Mike. This did go out of print fairly quickly, so I'm not hugely shocked by that. All right, and then ready for art. Pending artist assignment include a Fading Star, Defiance, Epipoli, Iron Storm, Order and Opportunity, The Guerrilla Generation, and Zizka, which I'm probably not pronouncing correctly, but that's actually, so of that stuff that looks interesting, Order and Opportunity, Zizka, Defiance, Epipoli is Ancients, Levian Campaign, Defiance is the game I think it is. Yeah, so this is David Doctor and Mark Herman are working on this game, Defiance. The topic is the modern conflict in the Ukraine, like happening right now, the conflict in the Ukraine, but it doesn't cover the entire conflict. It just covers a particular part of it. So I have said it before, I would be super leery of this just because it's still happening, not out of sensitivity reasons, but for data reasons, right? I mean, how do you vet your data to put this game together? Mark is basically the only fellow I'd trust to be involved in this kind of thing right now. So I done seen that I'm willing to say, yeah, it's probably going to be awesome. And we'll be mentioning that some more later. All right. So, and then is there anything else interesting here? A bunch of people here. Go check all of them out. Here's the rulebook for Red. Let me zoom out a little bit now. Here's the rulebook cover for Red Dust Rebellion. It looks good. Here's some In the Shadows cards. The cards look good. Here's this is game images from Infernal Machine. This is Bear Trap, which I've done an interview with the designer on that, so go check that out. Here's some more counters from Cuius Regio, which again I'm very excited about. Here's some map segments from Baltic Empires. That's an interesting looking map. Very interesting. So cool looking stuff here. Here's a cover for the second printing of Holland 44. Looks an awful lot like the first printing of Holland 44, except that it might say second printing on it. I don't even see that it says second printing on it. But in any case, awesome game, totally worth your time. So Mark's again. Mark, I'm trusted you here. If you're saying the OB looks good, I'm okay with your say so on this. On the strength of one of the games we'll be talking about tonight, actually. All right, so there's some stuff on Coast Watchers, the new tri-pack for Battles of the American Revolution, Fighting Formations US 29th, a bunch of other stuff here. Anything in particular? This Order and Opportunity actually sounds pretty interesting as well. I've actually got an eye on that. Here's GMT's cover for their Weimar Republic game, which is a strong cover. But things about the game design make me more interested in the Capstone game at this exact moment. All right. Communist Party of China. This is for, what's this from? This is from China's War. Okay. Which is an upcoming coin game about the Second Sino-Japanese War. All right. And then reprint tracking and all the other stuff. So I think we have thoroughly covered the, that's, this happens. They've done this to me fairly regularly, actually. So FYI, that the link to a fast game was supposed to be to a France at 40 unboxing. So bear that in mind. So, all right. So, and yes, as Christopher Smith points out, remember to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Well, shit. There we go. All right. So now we've managed to fix that. All right, we got 191 people here, folks. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We're going to talk about American wars and the war games that depict them. And as previously mentioned, the three conflicts we won't be discussing because we talk about, as war gamers, we talk about them a lot. They are the American Civil War, World War II, and because, I mean, I could pick any World War I game that has Americans in it, so it's like too big of a topic to squeeze in with what is fundamentally a list of topics that we don't see much coverage on. So I'm leaving World War I out as well. Other topics are, however, fair game. These include various American Indian wars. There's a whole range of conflicts that happened over the course of several hundred years that we now kind of all lump together as the American Indian Wars. A couple of these will deal with that. And we're doing them in alphabetical order, by the way. We also need King Phillips War, which is one of the aforementioned wars, American Indian Wars. There's King William's War, which is late 1600s. Yes. And that is so interestingly, there's several major European conflicts that are kind of fought between in the 17th and 18th century and I guess even in the 19th century, all of which spilled over into the American continent in one capacity or another. The War of the League of Augsburg, sometimes called the 9 Years' War, is over here in its North American incarnation called King William's War. The War of the Spanish Succession in its North American theater is called Queen Anne's War. The War of the Austrian Succession is King George's War. And the War of the 7 Years' War is over here, again, called the French and Indian War, which is the one of those that has probably the most games about it. There was not a problem finding those games. The Pontiac's Rebellion, there's been a couple games on Pontiac's Rebellion, actually. I do have War in Europe, but that's because this is what I'm working on, right? I don't choose the topic based on what I'm clipping. Don't normally, right? If there's a cool synchronicity thing happening, then great. And the War of Jenkins' Ear, but War of Jenkins' Ear is part of the War of the Austrian Succession. So in that context, it's part of King George's War. Also, we have the American Revolutionary War, which I think doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. The Spanish-American War. And although I could not find an example, the quasi-war with France that busted out in about 1798 during the Wars of the French Revolution, let's put it that way. I think it was the War of the Second Coalition going on at the time. Maybe it would have been the War of the Second Coalition. By American, I mean the United States in this context. So we are being clear. But that would have been a less catchy title on the card. So let's go to our slide show. And the first game we're going to talk about is one that I have not played, but I have played the series. I've played the 1775 game. This is from Academy Games. It's called 1754 Conquest, the French and Indian War. The designers are Bo Beckett and Jeff Stahl. And this is a 2017 Academy Games release. I'm not really sure what's going on with Academy Games because they've been kind of screwing around with Mexican-American War does qualify, by the way. And there is one in here on the Mexican-American War. I've got 22 or 23 games here, as I recall. So, the Aroostook War. I am not familiar with this, but there's a lot of these Native wars with with or between or among Native Americans that I'm just not familiar with. This is an angle of history that Wargames haven't really done a ton with. But that said, we will see a couple of examples here. So, Mexican-American War overview game. John, keep an eye on Halls of Montezuma coming from Fort Circle. That's going to be a very easy game to deal with. There's also, I think, a GMT game called Halls of Montezuma, which, as I recall, is a point-to-point card-driven game. It also required a reprint kit. And there's also Veracruz from the old SPI days. So there's that. Well, I'm reluctant to compare Gringo with Veracruz, though. They're very different scales, and that's why. So, and of course, some of these conflicts do involve Canadians as well. So I don't have a lot to say about 1754, but I can tell you that I did enjoy playing 1775, and furthermore, have not only played the digital version, but wrote a review of the digital version for Grogheads. I think it was for Grogheads. Might have been for Armchair Dragoons. I'm not sure. But it's a solid game. And the 1754 one is supposed to be good as well. So moving on is an all-time Avalon Hill classic. This is 1776. This was released in 1974. The designer is Randall Reed, which I'm aware I've gotten wrong multiple times in the past. All right, and Come and Chariot, which I can't pick every game here, so I picked some stuff, more stuff that I either have played or have something to say about. Is kind of the cant to the list. But Navajo Wars and Come and Chariot are both very highly regarded, as is really everything Joel's doing, to be completely honest about it. The King Phillips War from Compass is good, but a bit of a gateway to wargaming game. Is that what it's called? Because the King Phillips War that I got in the list here is the one from Multiman. Now I will say, as Meandering Mike points out, there's some flaws and holes in this thing, but I still think it holds up pretty well. I think it's quite a good looking map for 1974, for that matter. Mark is getting ready to play 1776. I think this is worth people's time, even if you do find that it does have some deficiencies in terms of balance. Let's put it that way. The Pig War. There you go. Maybe. I don't know. Petra Pictures mentions an obscure game that was on the Fenian raids into Canada. I don't know what this is. I don't know anything about the topic or anything about any hypothetical game that may have occurred. All right, so I guess we are correcting ourselves to Multiman. Also, I just want to mention, I suppose, what a great cover this is. This is a fabulous box cover. It, even if it didn't say 1776 on it, you would know exactly what it's about. I think this is, admittedly, we're 75 years into the history of the hobby here. So, and that's a factor as far as like designers and publishers having trouble finding great titles for their games. A lot of the great titles have frankly already been taken. But I will often have a sort of negative reaction to when I hear about a new war game and neither the title nor the cover tell me anything about what it is about. Now, in some cases, at least, that's my own ignorance talking because it's a topic I don't know anything about, so I'm not making the mental connection there. But in other cases, there are, it'll be about World War II or something like that, and you'd look at the box and look at the title and never know that it's a World War II game. And I think that's, it's not my problem, but it is a problem for the publisher. That's a marketing failure, I think. So there's plenty of games covering the American Revolution. I agree. I think this is one of, I would put this on my list. This would be a decent show topic, actually. I would put this on my list of top 10 Avalon Hill covers of all time. And it might be the only one on that list that isn't a Roger McGowan cover. At least I'm making an assumption that this isn't a Roger McGowan cover. But I think this is a fabulous cover. It's a fabulous title. It says 1776. There's no question about what the game is about or what it's called or any of that. Just a fabulous piece of graphic design here, in my opinion. All right. Stigler says 1776 was his very first war game, which is fantastic. William Bird says there's a Legion game about the Fenian raids. Maybe that's one of the ones we'll talk about here tonight. But if so, I don't know anything about it. And Christopher Smith says there's a copy of 1776 for sale in the Atlantica Juegos game shop in Madrid. So if you're in somewhere in Europe, maybe check that out if you need it. It's going to be hard. I don't know how hard it is to get this Avalon Hill stuff not in the U.S., but it can't be that easy, right? I assume it's easier to find here, right? Where I might go into a Goodwill, and you never know. I might find something interesting. All right, in any case, next up is, again, folks, these are in alphabetical order, not chronologically. This is 1812. This might be the most recent game on the list, too, although there's at least one from 2022 and at least one from 2021. This is 1812, War on the Great Lakes Frontier. This is a game designed by Ken Reppel and published by Compass. This looks, I haven't had a chance to play this, but from what I have looked at so far, this looks amazing, and I really want to get to play this. I really like the 1776 map, too, by the way, considering that it is a 1974 game. I think it looks amazing. 1812 is gorgeous. The pieces are gorgeous. The map's gorgeous. All the books, it's just a beautiful, beautiful game physically, and the game looks really solid as well. So I have fiddled with it a bit. We have an interview with Ken that we did quite some time ago now, when it was still in the design pipeline with Compass, so check that video out. And Ken is great. We love Ken over here. So Ken is a friend of the channel and a supporter, and we love Ken. So all right, so moving on from 1812, War on the Great Lakes Frontier. Next, we have a more recent topic. Not quite the most recent topic, but it's close. This is A Distant Plane. This is one of 2 coin games on this list. You can probably guess what the other one is. Am I missing something here? In the chat, you never know. All right, so Chris Crane, first of all, welcome to the show. Yep, I think it looks fantastic. I can't wait to play it. Map's much larger than expected. So it is 2 maps, but there's 1 map scenarios, and that's what that little extension map is actually for, to extend the map over so you could play the 1 map scenario without the entire full second map. But it is 2 games. All right, so one of the first like real war game videos I did that was like about a specific war game on this channel was about A Distant Plane, and that thing's over 10K views. So, or I don't know what the actual number is, but its number of views is very respectable. In it, I kind of walk through that basic coin card mechanism that it applies to basically, I don't know about all coin games at this point, but most of them. And this is about the war in Afghanistan, by the way. It's a fantastic game. I've played it multiple times. I don't own it anymore. I didn't feel like I needed to own it. I did get rid of it. And I have a little bit of regret over that, but it's not hard to find. And at any Origins I go to, there's a game of this running. So I can absolutely play it whenever I want, pretty much. And it is a really good game. It's one of the more complicated coin games, but not one of the most complicated coin games. And I'm going to say that the differential in complexity between simple coin games and complicated coin games is not that high. So I think it's not a terrible first choice for coin, but it does have a lot of the extra levers, like the lines of communication and stuff like that the simpler coin games don't necessarily, at least usually don't. Like a game like Cuba Libre or Andean Abyss doesn't have that extra mechanic, or the off-map tracks that you might see in something like Fire in the Lake, which is one of the most complicated coin games. Let me put it that way. But this game is totally worth your time, especially if you're interested in this particular topic. Does a really good. Let me go back to that actually, because one of the things that coin does is these. I consider these to be war games. If you want to argue with that, I don't care. Go ahead, but I'm not going to help you out with that rhetorical goal. So these do, but the degree to which any given coin game is a war game varies by coin game too. Some of them are not very war gamey at all, and some of them are quite war gamey. This one is one of the war gamier ones, but because it's a coin game, it does not neglect those political aspects that are really pretty critical to understanding this conflict. And to me, this was revelatory in terms of understanding the conflict, but also because this was my first coin game, which, is, so to me, this is an important game. Let me put it that way. Patchwork Pictures asks if I play Distant Plane with the propaganda insta-flip. I've never played that with that variant. Let me put it that way. But moving on from A Distant Plane, we have this series, which is called Indian Wars of the American West by Legion Wargames. And there's 3 games in the series, at least that I'm aware of. There's this one, The Battle of Adobe Walls, which I think is the first of them. No, this is the first of them. This was originally published by a company that I've never heard of outside of this context called Khyber Pass Games. And then it was picked up, and 2 additional volumes in the series were done by Legion Wargames. These are Michael Taylor games. The other 2 games in the series are also relevant to our topic tonight. They are Little Bighorn, which came out in 2005, and Rosebud Creek, which came out in 2007. The Adobe Walls version from Legion came out in 2013. So this is actually the most recent game in the series that I'm aware of. One wonders if there's still any life left in this series. I would hope so, because, well, I don't have any of them. I can't vouch for any of them. These are interesting topics. Little Bighorn, a little less so, because it's a famously one-sided battle, but it didn't necessarily have to be that way. And we tend to see less content on these kinds of topics, right? We see plenty of World War II, Civil War, American, there's even a decent number of like Korean War and Vietnam War games. And I do have at least one of each representing in the list tonight here. So I can't tell you much about how a Battle of the Adobe Walls plays, but I do know that this was successful enough to do 3 games in this series, although there hasn't been anything lately. Next up is a cat whining just outside the room. Next up is Kevin McPartland as the designer's Amateurs to Arms. And this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, this is a point-to-point game with one of my least favorite maps in the history of wargaming. I think it's one of those where it's kind of the wargame map is overprinted on top of a period map, and it's a point-to-point map. I find it visually confused and difficult to parse. So other than that, this is supposed to be quite a strong game, and this is about the War of 1812 as well. Mike Berticelli says that Adobe Walls has amazing graphics. The map is stunning. I've generally been quite pleased with stuff. I don't have a lot from Legion War games, but I've got, I think, 3 of their things, and I'm very happy with all 3 of them. I hope they continue that series. Let me put it that way. So I can't tell you much about Amateurs to Arms, except that I do have friends who have played it and who speak highly of it. I can just only thing I can really say is I recoiled at the map. But the game itself is well regarded, and Kevin McPartland is a swell guy. And I hope that his game Conquest of Paradise, which just got yanked off GMT's P500, will find another home somewhere. I'm inclined to believe that won't be a big problem. Let me put it that way. And hey, endorsement, Mark, we should put this on the back of the box. Amateurs to Arms is an excellent game. So, and it's got a reputation as an excellent game, right? So Mark's not saying anything controversial here. Moving along, we have, I feel like it would be remiss to not at least mention the Battles of the American Revolution, the Mark Miklos series. This series kicked off with, as I recall, Saratoga in 1998, and there's been one tri-pack which have the first 3 games, and there's a second tri-pack coming which will have the 4th, 5th, and 6th games. And each of those has like a little bonus game. The bonus game in Guilford, Saratoga, and Brandywine is Utah Springs. This is a reasonably straightforward hex encounter. I would say grand tactical treatment of these American Revolutionary War battles. It is highly regarded. It is pretty easy to play. Mark Miklos runs a tournament of it at WBC. So if you're there, you might stick your face into that. And I am reasonably sure that, as was the case last year, that there will be some representation of this series at the SD HistCon event in August at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. I was not into this series. I totally bought this because of the value. I am totally on board with Volume 2 as well. So, and I have become, I've been dragging my feet a little bit on this. I am, becoming more interested in the American Revolution as a topic. At this point, I might have as many as 10 American Revolution. I don't know. Hold on a second. I'll fucking find out. Of course, we're going to have to screw this up here. So I have got, according to my database, which may or may not be accurate, 8 games on the American Revolution. But if we're, I'm counting this as 1, not as 3. So, and I like this. I like the option. I don't really have a strong preference for what order they give me the options in, but I am all for having the option for like a strictly historical version of the battle versus a more balanced tournament ready version of the battle. I am completely comfortable with having both, and I don't particularly care which order they are presented in. Charles Latour says they're mostly enjoyable. I do remember having a pretty negative reaction to the map. I want to say it was the Saratoga map when it first came out. I remember seeing it. Some people were playing it at Origins. Maybe it was Brandywine, but I'm remembering it as Saratoga. These are high value. These tripacks especially are really high value products. And if you are interested in this topic at all, American Revolution at the, like I said, grand tactical level, I think you should probably look at this. Now, that said, there are other options in the space. There's Commands and Colors Tricorn, for example, if you want simpler. There's also a new game about Saratoga, or the Saratoga campaign, but it will have it's a battle game, but it'll have more than one battle in it, coming from Ken Reppel and Compass. That's being developed by Gilbert Collins, and Gilbert speaks glowingly of it. So I am very interested in seeing, and I have a very, very high opinion of Ken's other work. So I will be very interested to see what comes of that. All right. Next up is a game that was mentioned in the chat. I think you cannot have this conversation without mentioning End of Empire. Now, this was released originally in Command Magazine in 1997 and was redone by Compass. And then I bought it, so Compass is, of course, redoing it again. This is a fascinating and incredibly ambitious product. This basically covers all of the post-colonization, pre-industrial wars of North America. Okay, so you've got whether in the box or via scenarios that are available on, say, Board Game Geek or Consim World. You can do the American Revolution. You can do the French and Indian War, both of which are in the box. And there's a couple other things in the box as well. But there are fan-made scenarios for Queen Anne's War and King George's War and all this other stuff. This is a very interesting-looking game. Maybe not flawless, but it's so ambitious that I could not say no to this when I saw it on a shelf at the War Zone. So this is Jeff Anderson. Welcome to the show. You know what? This is not on the list. This is Campaigns of 1777 by Harold Buchanan. However, there will be another show coming up in the not incredibly distant future where this will be on the list. I can tell you that. This is S&T number 299. No, that's not it. It's like 301 or something like that. So the really fascinating thing about End of So we'll get back to Harold's Campaigns of 1777. John, I think so. I mean, there's Noble Knight, and they'll have sales and stuff. I don't think $99 is too much for a game, to be honest. Depends on the game, right? If it's whether I'm going to play it is questionable or not, then maybe it is too much. But if I'm going to play it, then that's not a problem. So the interesting thing about End of Empire is, and I was actually clipping this on the show not too long ago. That's a little tight. So what's in the box are King George's War, the French and Indian War, and the American Revolution, and there's fan-created scenarios for a ton of other stuff. This is another game, by the way, that's totally going to get organized in the Cube for Me trays once I get down to the Compass stuff. As you can see, SPI will take a little bit. So you may be seeing me clipping SPI stuff on this show for the rest of the year. Oh, that's a good call. A Glorious Chance. No, and it's really, I mean, I could only fit so many on here. And we're not doing this in chronological order either. So Gina Willis's Glorious Chance came out relatively recently, I want to say in 2023, from Legion Wargames. It is a solitaire game about the War of 1812 on Lake Ontario. It's actually super interesting looking. A buddy of mine did pick it up. And we have an interview with Gina about it. So check that video out as well. If you're talking about Just a Guards series on this, I from my perusal, I kind of agree with everything he's saying. But I also think that this is such a unique and ambitious title that I don't care as much as I might otherwise. And I might come up with, once I get it to the table, whenever that happens, I may actually just have some ideas on how to fix that. So, all right, Stegler, thanks for stopping by. Good luck on Vassal. So Harold Buchanan's game is called Campaigns of 1777. It appeared in Strategy and Tactics magazine. And you are, I think, Mike, if you had problems with the map, I would be willing to guess that that is Amateurs to Arms, because I have huge problems with readability with that map too. The map for Harold's game, Campaigns of 1777, is a Terry Leeds map. It is, in my opinion, the single finest looking magazine war game map ever. And we have many, many, many hundreds of magazine war game maps to compare it to, and some of which are really, really strong. So I find it very difficult to believe that the game you're talking about is Harold's 1777 game. Harold also is the designer of Liberty or Death, which we will get to here tonight as well. So my advice on End of Empire at this point is probably to wait for the reprint, but who knows when that'll come out. I mean, that might be 5 or 6 years away. Kilroy of Kilroy is here. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, everybody seems to agree with this. Even the people that are staunch advocates for the game, and it's supposed to be really good, but the map is not my favorite. Let me put it that way. Oh, well, this is definitely not the Harold Buchanan game that we're talking about. So this may be the case too. This is not something that springs to mind for me immediately, though. Oh, there you go. The modified rulebook for End of Empire on BGG fixes most problems. There we go. So Christopher Smith, thanks for stopping by. And Mark, if you're heading out as well, thanks once again for stopping by. I hope you're feeling better. All right, so moving on from that is an interesting game. I Will Fight No More Forever. This is a game originally published by Simulations Canada, designed by Steve Newberg. Original publication was in 1979, and as is the case with a bunch of these Steve Newberg and or SimCan games, it's been redone in Paper Wars magazine, and Compass put it out in 2016. I've got this. It looks intriguing. I don't know anything about this topic, so this will be a good angle to explore this topic in. But interesting looking game and a great title, I think I have to say. And, you know, with the title and the cover tells me what the game's about. I am satisfied with that. I think this is a really striking quote to use as a title. So, and it is Chief Joseph that said it. So I haven't played this, but it does look intriguing. Next up is, and I think we'll do a short break after this one, our lone entry in the Great Battles of the American Civil War system. This is Gringo. This is a 2004 release. This is Tactical or Grand Tactical Battles of the Mexican-American War. I think all of the highlights are in the core game, and if you want some more battles, there is an expansion called Battles with the Gringos, which over the last couple of years, this sat around at GMT on the deep discount page for years, and now the friggin' thing's going for like $150. The expansion, not Gringo the box game. I've got the main game, I don't have the expansion. I haven't played this particular one, but there's not like that many options for Mexican War Tactical, right? And in fact, this was my entry for, I wanted to cover as many of those individual topics as I could, or those individual conflicts. And this was the most obvious one to cover the Mexican-American War. I could just as easily have picked SPI's Veracruz. But I think this is more recent, and I think it is more appealing today because it's a more modern release, and it's in a series that is, let's say, surging in popularity. I think that's fair. Now, I will agree with Mike here, though, that SPI's Veracruz, which I think is a Richard Berg design. I hadn't thought of that, but that's that game is fairly well regarded, or well remembered, let's say. And I do have it. It is on my list of things I would like to get played at some point. Well, they took huge chunks of Mexican territory in that war, which was a absolutely naked war of conquest. By the way, they were at war with Mexico to take Mexican territory. You can look at the history on this. As Mark points out, Veracruz is operational. Yes. So very different approach to the game, where Gringo is going to give you that tactical or grand tactical stuff. I've heard of this, but I don't know anything about it. All right, so I'm actually not super behind on the chat, so we're not worried about that right now, but we do have, we have arrived at the time to hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the sponsor of the Counterclipping Show. So take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, once again, thank you, Noble Knight. They are the official sponsor of the Counterclipping Show. Patty Rafesky, thanks for stopping by. Mike Reed mentions that Gringo and Battles with the Gringos desperately need a new version. Yeah, I'll agree with this, but I think this is true of all of the old ACW games, actually. I think it's super, super, super unlikely that we'll see a new version of Dead of Winter, but I will relish having new versions of Three Dog, Red Badge of Courage, and River of Death, all of which are quite hard to get. Halls of Montezuma by MMP. I think we're talking... There is a game called Halls of Montezuma that was published by GMT, and it's a game that... had a lot of issues, and I think they issued an update kit. So as Patchwork Pictures corrects GMT, there we go. I don't want to get into the geopolitical causes of the Mexican-American War, but this is a fair statement, actually, because the circumstances that lead to the Mexican-American War are later the similar circumstances that would lead to the American Civil War. Let me put it that way. And then that causes, I think, more... that is one of the things that leads to the emergence of the U.S. as a global superpower in the 20th century. Let me put it that way. Oh, there you go. The Alamo micro game. We've got a better Alamo game than that, though, coming up here. Where is it? No, that's why. All right. So moving on. We have Mark Herman's legendary Gulf Strike. This is our entry covering the Gulf War, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the definitive treatment of the Gulf War. So you do, if you're getting it for that reason, that does mean that you need one of the later printings, but that's fine. I've got this on eBay, and it was not super duper cheap, but not incredibly expensive either. This is a Victory Games release from 1986. Is that correct? Where is it? Gulf Strike, 1983 is what I've got written down here. So pretty early Victory Games title or release. And I will mention two important things that are relevant to modern releases here. One is that the VUCA Simulations recent release, relatively recent last year, release Red Strike is based on the Gulf Strike system. And as a result, its designer, Yves Rattel, is working with Mark on a Gulf Strike 2 that will be released from VUCA Simulations. That is the thing that Mark clarified on either last week's show or the week before. And that's a really exciting development. But of course, I've got the original as well. So, yeah, I'm not going to be able to, I agree, I'm not really going to be able to deal with this topic with the seriousness that it deserves on a night when we're doing another topic, right? Mike Reed says that Halls of Montezuma was somewhat abandoned post-production by GMT, was never made right. Okay, I might be thinking of something different then. I have heard that it launched with problems. So that is interesting. Scott Rowland, thanks for stopping by. Mark confirms the Gulf Strike release is February 83, so very early 83. There were expansions for it. That's why I say get the later ones, because they have this extra stuff in them. And it is kind of adorable picture of Saddam Hussein on there, right? So yeah, this is one that I definitely want to play because of its ability to model the Gulf War, which was, which is a thing that happened when I was in college the first time, as I recall. So, And it's a game that still, I think, is pretty well regarded today, as frankly a lot of the Victory games are. There's some exceptions. I feel like Cold War, for example, is not particularly fondly remembered, but so many of these Victory games titles turn out to be like the definitive game on their topics. This is not the only one, nor is it the only one that will be appearing tonight. This would be hilarious, wouldn't it? All right, so moving on from Gulf Strike. Next up this is an interesting one. Those of us with an interest in the history of modern China might remember that the Americans, in fact, did help suppress the Boxer Rebellion. Here is one of the relatively small number of games on that topic. This is Keep Up the Fire. This was originally released in 2011. It is a design by John Welch, and the image that we see here is of its more recent reprint by Worthington Games. That's a 2021 release. This is not a topic that there's very many games about at all. The game itself did predate the war, but they did an expansion pack to cover that conflict. So, Enrique Romero, thanks for stopping by. Says Halls of Montezuma is a great point-to-point game. Had some print problems, but there's an errata with corrections. Supply lines are super important. Ooh, that's another one that I would have otherwise included, actually. Not this Halls of Montezuma. I would have included, had I remembered to include it when I was assembling the list and had room for it, Supply Lines of the American Revolution. Either game, really, the North one or the Southern one. I think they're both equally insightful. I think you will gain a lot of really interesting and valuable insights from playing those games, as I did. And they are both from Hollandspiel, and they are both designs by Amabel Holland. So, but yeah, Boxer Rebellion is another pretty interesting topic. And if we're almost done with the Soviet infantry, or at least the 1-4 Soviet infantry divisions, this is an interesting topic, and there's not very many games on it at all. And to be fair, I think it's a little bit of a difficult game to model, for a couple of reasons, one of which is the nature of this conflict. Another of which is the fact that it's going to be fairly difficult to get really great sources. You're going to have, I won't say it's impossible, but you're going to be challenged to find good sources for this that aren't just American sources or British or European sources, right? I would absolutely, if I were designing a game on this topic, I would consider it an absolute necessity to find Chinese sources on this topic, right? Because they saw this very differently than the colonial powers did. Let's put it that way. Blood on the Ohio is another one that is not on the list, but could have been very easily. It is from Compass. My eyes are always drawn to it because it says Ohio on the box. And I have the sense that it was not a top seller for Compass because they still have it in stock. Last I checked, and it's several years old at this point. Yeah, that's true. I don't know about tangentially, but I mean, the subject of opium was one of the drivers of this and the Taiping Rebellion and other stuff that happened in this general period, in China. So, very important history. Ooh, good one. Paul Rohrbaugh's Walking a Bloody Path, The Battle of Fallen Timbers. Is there a game on the quasi-war with France? Because I'm not aware of one. Although you might see like scenarios or something. There's so many of these, they're just going in a baggie at this point. I'll sort them out. And I'm not counting them tonight, but there should be almost 400 of these Soviet infantry, or I guess rifle divisions at this point. All right, there we go. All right, next up is King Phillips War. This was mentioned previously. This is a John Paniski game. Am I right about that? Yeah. John Paniski, 2010. It's pretty interesting. It goes on sale. I don't know if they still have it or not. So King Philip is a Native American leader who leads this particular conflict on the Native American side. And it's a pretty interesting... Oh, shit. I am wrong. There's hundreds more Soviet infantry divisions. So 2 full compartments in a GMT tray here. So we're going to be not only clipping this all night, but probably clipping this particular counter all night. There may well be some scenarios, since the quasi-war was primarily a conflict of the French seizing American shipping. I would expect that there might be a scenario or two in naval combat games of the period. So something like Wooden Ships and Iron Men, or Flying Colors, or Close Action, or something like that. The Taiping Rebellion is an absolutely fascinating topic, and I do have a game on it. And there's, as far as I'm aware, there are, at least that I'm aware of, which might mean it's just in English. There are two. There's a magazine game that Richard Berg did back in the 80s, and then he reimagined that game for Kuro Niko Games, which is a Chinese publisher, and I actually have that. It's called The Dragon and the Sun, I think, something like that. And that doesn't make sense. The Dragon, oh shit, I can't remember the name of it now. But it's a pretty interesting looking game. You could actually get it from GMT at one point. I'm not sure if that's still the case. 218 people watching here, folks. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And I didn't mention this before, but if you want to get your comment highlighted, super chats and super stickers are on, so it helps to support the channel, as do all the other things, including just being here. And I am guaranteed to respond to a super chat or super sticker comment, even though it might not be the answer you're looking for, but I'll respond to it. Otherwise, I could miss friggin' anything. Oh, very interesting. Okay, so Mike Reed says he believes MMP finally sold off the last King Phillips War. I've got an Did I do an unboxing of this? I'm not sure that I did. I know I was given a copy by Fucko to do an unboxing of. I'm not sure I ever actually published the video. Mean Joe Green says that one of George MacDonald Fraser's Flashman books takes place during the Taiping Rebellion, but there was a million of those. There you go. Good book on the Taiping Rebellion. This is supposed to be a very good book. I have not read it. There you go. Mike Reed mentions the Taiping Rebellion game is called The Dragon and the Cross, and it is a redo of Berg's earlier game, Manchu. But it was published in China, and we just happen to have it over here. So it's a fascinating topic, and although it's not the most attractive game I got, it doesn't look awful, and in terms of graphics, that is. And it's a super interesting topic, so it's never leaving. All right, so a couple things here. So Joe Mentum says, I'll be bringing King Phillips War at the SD HistCon event. If anyone was interested, there you go. The biggest engagement of the war happened in Rhode Island. Yeah, this was all in New England, as far as I'm aware. Captain Button, welcome to the show. You might be more specific about what platform you are talking about. I've been looking and have no idea where the chat you are responding to is. That would be on YouTube. That is why I have the chat messages highlighted on screen. For the benefit of those watching elsewhere. But yeah, the chat's on YouTube. So how many people are watching on Twitch right now? One. Okay. Which is typical. All right. Jeff Anderson, Chinese Gordon, eccentric British commanders. Yeah, that's true. That's fair. Eccentric is one way to put it. But interesting conflict that there's not a lot of games on. John Paniski is a very interesting designer for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is that he's willing to tackle these kind of unusual subjects. Next up is one that is not an unusual subject or an obscure game in any way. This is Harold Buchanan's Liberty or Death. This was published in 2016, and it is a dynamite coin game. Some people have expressed their concerns with the sort of fit of the topic into sort of the a pretty standard, for most purposes, 4-position coin game, but I still think this is a really good game. I think there's, possibly not perfect. Some people think that's really easy to win as the Native Americans. Some people don't see much of a point in playing anybody but the French. But I nevertheless like this game for one of the reasons is because I feel like it treats the French with real value. But that doesn't necessarily mean the French will have a ton to do earlier in the game. So there's that as well. This is another of the somewhat more complicated coin games, but not on my list of most complicated coin games. The combat system is very different from that of other coin games. Let me put, at least at the time, very different than typical coin combat. So folks might find, there we go. We're killing it on Twitch tonight here, folks. Thanks, however, I don't care how people watch. Usually there's one, maybe two people watching on Twitch. So, also the map on here, once again, a Terry Leeds map is absolutely dynamite. The people people complain about everything. I think the combat's fine. It's just different than it is in other coin games. Edward Bornstein, thanks for stopping by. So when we say coin game, and if we're being formal about it, we mean the coin or counterinsurgency series of games from GMT Games. This was originated in, I don't remember the year, but the first game in the series was Andean Abyss. Liberty or Death is another coin game. These are characterized by asymmetrical player positions, factional action menus, and victory conditions, and a fairly interesting card mechanic where there are cards, so it is card driven in a sense, but nobody has a hand. There is a deck, and there are two cards that are important at any given time. There's the card that is currently happening, and then there's the next card that will come up, and you can see what that card is. And then depending on the game, you'll build a deck and you'll insert scoring cards in the deck at some kind of interval, depends on the game, exactly how you do it. And then when those scoring cards come up, you'll conduct a scoring sequence and determine if the game has been won at that point. So Amazon Rec Twitch. I have no particular position on this. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't care. So this is one of the reasons that folks have expressed some reservations about the way that Liberty or Death specifically fits the 4-player coin paradigm, right? I think what you're saying here is not necessarily wrong. I am not pretending it is a perfect game. I will tell you it's one of my favorite coin games. I am not disagreeing with the awkwardness of the fit of the Native Americans into the 4-player standard coin algorithm. But I will point out that some of the later coin games that came out after this have 2 positions or 3 positions, and I think there's a 5-player coin game coming or out or something like that. All right, so next up, and if I haven't mentioned it, gorgeous Terry Leeds map in this too. Absolutely stunning. All right, back to the topic of the American Indian Wars. We have Navajo Wars by Joel Toppin. This is a 2013 release, and it covers the entire history of this topic. Because I haven't played this. It is very highly regarded. I believe this is a solitaire experience. And I might be wrong about that, but this supposedly covers the entire history of the conflicts with the Navajo from the 1595 to 1864 is what it says on the box. So, you know what? I'm going to disagree with you on this though, because I think one can argue about how well the implementation of the French as an actual player faction in Liberty or Death is handled, but I really like having the French and their own victory conditions as a factor in the game. Because the French are helping the Americans out, but the French are doing it for their own reasons too. It's not just magnanimity on the part of Louis the fucking 16th. Right? Was it Louis the 16th at the time? It might have been Louis the 15th. It's not just magnanimity on the part of the French crown to help these American colonists out. I mean, a lot of it is they're doing this to fuck with the British and to help to protect their own colonies in the Caribbean, right? So Rob Johnson clarifies that Navajo Wars is solitaire, as is Comancherry. I think I knew that. I just was questioning my memory of it. Molotov Cocktail says it's really, really good. You could play it as semi-co-op. Not hugely surprising. So, I mean, Marty, you might be right. I guess to finish this up real quick, you might be right about this, but I also like the way the French are set up in Liberty or Death a lot. So the Native Americans, I feel like maybe they shouldn't be a faction, but or it should be like an NPC faction, as the Germans are in Falling Sky, as somebody suggested. This is, I have to wonder to what extent something like Freedom in the Galaxy might have impacted later games on the topic of counterinsurgency. I'm not sure that it did, but I'm also not thinking about it. I'm not sure that it didn't. All right, Perfidious Albion says he finds the GMT games about the American Indian Wars very abstract, which is absolutely accurate. Whereas the Legion games, well, those are battle games, though, right? The Navajo Wars covers 300 friggin' years. I mean, I would expect a certain amount of abstraction to be present in that situation. Mike Reed is asking about Berg's Geronimo. This is, that sounds interesting. Takes a page from Mark's Peloponnesian War, and that the players switch sides during the solitaire play. That's very interesting, because I was complaining about that nobody else has really, that I've seen it off the top of my head anyway, has really tried to do that mechanic, other than in Peloponnesian War. So if Geronimo does that, that makes me somewhat interested in Geronimo. Maybe I should check that out. Old Avalon Hill game from the 90s, I want to say. Could be the late 80s, but my memory is a little bit suspect on that kind of stuff. Late period Avalon Hill. So we have mentioned already in a previous show, Remember the Maine. This appeared in a TSR issue number 108 of Strategy and Tactics magazine, and it is a game by Vance von Voorhees, of all people. This is not a topic for which he is exceptionally well known, but he is a crackerjack designer, in my opinion, and therefore this is worth watching on the strength of that alone. And the good news is it is a TSR issue of S&T magazine. You should be able to get it for $10. I picked this up at No Night, actually, from the clearance room, so you should be able to pick this up reasonably inexpensively. And the game looks reasonably interesting. Of the TSR, you'll recall that we did the TSR and 3W era games, where we looked at the higher rated ones, and this was one of the higher rated ones. And Mark Herman says it's a cool game, so if that endorsement means anything to everybody else as it does to me, then that makes it worth looking at. So Ninja Green likes Indian Wars games from a French company. It's a solo game that covers so the game is called Indian Wars, covers Washita, Hansinger Bluff, and Little Bighorn. That sounds potentially interesting. Yeah, it totally was, but it also covered insurgent warfare. So it is absolutely a reskinned Star Wars. But I love that game. I think it's a great game. It's really too complicated and too slow playing for nowadays. Nobody would design a game like it now, but I still think it's a terrific game. So, and the serial numbers are pretty thoroughly filed off, but it's also wearing it right on its sleeve, right? It's not trying to conceal that it's secretly Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off. You can see the Star Wars logo has been filed off, but you can still see Star Wars where the filing has occurred. Let me put it that way. There's some truth to this too, I believe. There's a period in which SPI is kind of trying to figure out role-playing games. They released 4 games that they marketed as RPGs. And Freedom of the Galaxy is not one of them, but it is also one of those games that is a bit of a hybrid, because you had like a whole background book and character cards, and individual character-to-character combat, which is pretty straightforward, right? But I mean, not like what you would see even in D&D. As far as I can tell, just looking at who did what, as I recall, this is a John Butterfield and a co-designer was responsible for everything that you're saying, by the way, also would apply to the SPI War of the Ring, which was as I recall, Richard Berg and Howie Barish. Freedom of the Galaxy was John Butterfield and Howie Barish. So there's a number of these sort of hybrids, but they didn't really try to tell anybody they were role-playing games. However, in the case of Commando, Dallas, they both say role-playing games. Let me put it that way. But also Universe, which is a John Butterfield game, and Dragon Quest. We'll have more to say about this when we do an actual show on that. So Frank Davis is here. Frank, thanks for stopping by. Has just played Larry Pinkerton's ACW game named End the War Game. Although he hasn't secured a publisher, it is a really well-designed game that Frank likes as much as U.S. Civil War and For the People. So that's a huge endorsement, folks, from Frank Davis, legendary designer himself. So I'm making him self-conscious probably, but because he is a modest fellow as well. But I think this is a very strong endorsement. Let me put it that way. I will disagree with you here. I think I will promise sometime in the next 6 weeks. You are likely to see, I don't promise the schedule, but I will promise a show about the RPGs published by Wargame publishers. The publishers I have in mind will be SPI, Avalon Hill, and Game Designers Workshop, and probably Columbia Games. But Columbia will be fast because there's only really 2 products. Whereas Avalon Hill did 4 or 5 games, and GDW did a huge pile, and SPI did 4. So, but I need to acquire some of those items. That's why I'm not ready to do that show yet. But the long answer to Edward here is I will disagree and say that I think the strongest of the SPI RPGs was Dragon Quest by quite a bit. But there was some cool stuff in Universe as well. All right, so moving on from Remember the Main, which I do need to get played. Here's another one that I've got. This is a very recent release from Compass Games, Paper Wars. I think it's 2023. Am I right about that? This is, yes, 2023. This is a Steve Lieski? I'm not sure how Steve pronounces his name. This is a very well-regarded game, even though it has been released only recently. It is pretty streamlined and fast playing. Mo, who I haven't seen, stopped by tonight, but I'm sure he will be by at some point. I have also, by the way, run Dragon Quest, but it was in the 90s, I think, that I did that. But this looks like a pretty solid, Second Fallujah looks like a pretty solid game. And graphically, it's, I think, a pretty nice game as well. I don't think Magic Realm is an RPG as well, but certainly someone at Richard Hamblin was the designer of that, as I recall. I don't really think that Magic Realm was designed to be an RPG, but it was definitely designed to fit in that mode. Might be worth a look as an honorable mention to talk about Magic Realm in that show as well. And Edward, of course, you are so adorable, Edward. I love you so much. Unprompted by me, Edward, the check is in the mail for thank you for bringing up Traveler. Traveler is still alive nowadays. It is my personal favorite role-playing game of all time. So we will be bringing you additional content on it as well. And Eric Goebel, thank you so much. The support is much appreciated. You have a great rest of the night. I've heard good things about this. The Kuwait War Arabian Nightmare, published in S&T number 139, exceptional for its quick publication following the conflict. That would have been in or very close to the end of the 3W era, as I recall. I've heard of the game. I don't know how well it has been received. Let me put it that way. Yes, it will. So Victory Games is actually included as well, but there's again only one from Victory Games. James Bond 007. Yeah, we won't be leaving that out. That is a dynamite game, actually. Mike Reed says Magic Realm was not designed as an RPG, just like D&D wasn't designed as a war game. They were both the extremes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. Let me put it in a slightly different way. I find it credible that in 1979 or 78 or 80 or whatever it was, that say, Eric Goldberg may have gotten confused about what exactly an RPG and a role-playing game was, and exactly what made it different from a board war game or a war game of any kind. when designing Commando. However, Eric Goldberg had definitely figured it out by the time he later designed Dragon Quest. I don't believe that Richard Hamblin was under any confusion in this regard when he designed Magic Realm. I have the sense that he was trying to design a board game like D&D, not a role-playing game. I don't think he thought he was designing a role-playing game. I have heard really good things about Phase Line Smash, actually. I find the cover absolutely atrocious. But other than that, I've heard good things about Phase Line Smash. A lot of people have fond memories of that. All right. And I don't want to, which time have we got here? We got about 24 minutes left. So I've got 6 games left on the list. So maybe we'll talk about this stuff when I'm done with the list. Moving on from Second Fallujah, we have Kevin Bertram's. He has both the designer and the publisher. The Fort Circle Games is basically Kevin's publisher. Shores of Tripoli. We have a combination interview / playthrough session with Kevin on the channel on this. This was received very warmly. It is a very light war game about the war with the Barbary pirates. Highly American topic. And its companion game, also called Shores of Montezuma and about the Mexican War, will be coming to Kickstarter very, very soon. And we will mention that with whenever it goes live, which might be next week. But Shores of Tripoli is a very nice game. It's very light. It plays in 60 to 90 minutes, I would say, maybe even a little faster than that. I think it is a very good game. It's a very solid game. It's sort of a soft. This is going to be. Somebody's probably going to object to the terminology I'm going to use here. I consider this kind of a soft war game in the sense that it's easy to pitch and easy to teach to people that don't play war games. And it's on Rally the Troops. Did I not say Halls of Montezuma? I thought I said Halls of Montezuma, but maybe I got that wrong. Wouldn't be the first time today. So Shores of Tripoli, solid game. And Kevin and company at Fort Circle are doing some fairly interesting things. They've got at least 3 or 4 other things that I'm aware of that I am very interested in. Next up is a classic, The Alamo. This came out in 1981 and was redone by Decision in a boxed, I think a 1-inch box with a genuinely horrifically terrible cover. Much, much worse than this cover, which is a fabulous cover. This is an Eric Lee Smith design. Again, 1981 from SPI, so pretty late design for SPI. This is a really one-sided battle, but nevertheless, this was a very popular game and is still fondly remembered nowadays. So I do not, I just want to, maybe I'll say this again. I don't mean that in a derogatory way or or like in some kind of sense that you have to be some kind of soft-headed person to enjoy it. What I mean by that is it's not like it's visibly not like a hardcore wargamer game, right? And therefore, I think it might be a better game to introduce people who are completely cold on war games to war games. So the Alamo, not so much. This is a game that looks like it came out in 1981, but again, very highly regarded. And it's 1836, so it predates the Mexican War, right? So you get your whole Sam Houston and Santa Anna fix on here. I don't know. That's not a great box. I think this is a really nice cover, to be completely honest. Classic piece of American history here, and or Texas history, as the case may be. And a game that, again, is still pretty well regarded today. And it's Eric Lee Smith. And Eric Lee Smith is one of those designers that I think everybody should pay very, very, very close attention to, because whatever Eric Lee Smith is doing, chances are it will turn out to be important, as it was when he worked with Victory Games back in the 80s. So Line in the Sand is probably actually harder to get than the Alamo, believe it or not. There you go. All right, so moving on from the Alamo, next we have another one of those Victory Games things that turned out to be in my opinion, the definitive game on its topic. Now, this is not a soft war game. This is a serious simulation of the Korean War from the military aspects to the political aspects. It is a very full-throated simulation of the Korean War. This was originally published in 1986 by Victory Games. This is, of course, a Joe Balkowski design, if I haven't said that out loud. It is an all-time classic. It was redone by Compass in 2021. I like the Compass version too, but the Compass version is 2 maps, as I recall, and the original is 1 map. This is an absolutely dynamite game. It also plays pretty fast. You can easily play this in 1 day at a convention. I think there's 2 different covers for Monty's Gamble, isn't there? I was about to say, I think Tim Zales is after that topic as well. I have the Compass version, and the VG version is more compact. Let me put it that way. It's otherwise the same game, right? So if the nothing about the graphics, the mid 80s graphics is bothering you about the Victory Games version, and I think this one looks fine. I played the original Victory Games version and was not bothered by any graphical element of it, which I would have been had we played Hell's Highway instead, because I would be totally blind after the amount of eye strain involved in that. I didn't have that problem with this. This is an extraordinarily strong game. I think it holds up just as well today as it did when it came out in the 80s. This is an absolutely dynamite game, and really, like another game we'll talk about in a minute, I think everybody can see where that's going. I think this has not only not yet been equaled, I think this game does not feel dated, other than the graphics. This game does not feel dated to me at all. This could have come out last year. Nobody else has really even tried to do a game about the Korean War that's this good. Now, I've had good things to say about, and I will continue to say good things about OCS Korea, but it's a completely different experience, right? You're playing OCS and it's Korea, right? You're playing Korea-flavored OCS. So that's like kimchi flavored OCS, right? Whereas this is like a full Korean feast, right? This is the real deal. I cannot speak highly enough about this game. It is, if you are interested in this topic at all and have a tolerance for a fairly complicated but not overwhelmingly so game, I think, you're right about this. The Victory Games, I think, is 2 maps then, and the Compass one is 4 maps. So it's a substantially larger footprint. This is true of almost every Korean War game, though, that only covers the active phases of the war through about late 51. So I will say your experience with the counters is not unique to you on the reprint, but not everybody necessarily had the same experience with the counters. I want to say those counters went to at least 3 different printers over the course of the saga that it was to get this game released from Compass. The really, really thick ones are really, really thick. They were an absolute bastard to get out of the sheets. And they were difficult to clip as well. So, yeah, this is not, I want to be gentle to Adam because I respect what he's doing with that series, that the OSS series. But let me be extremely delicate and say that it is not as strong a game as the Joe Balkowski Korean War. I think that is an incredibly uncontroversial way to say that. In addition, as the first game in the OSS series, the Korea Fire and Ice, what the fuck does that topic even mean, by the way? When I hear Fire and Ice, I think of the Ralph Bakshi animated fantasy movie. But in addition to having a rotten title, it's an attractive production as far as art goes. As the first game in that series, the Korea game launched with a lot of problems. Let me put it that way. When we say the MMP version, that's the OCS Korea. I think OCS Korea is great. It's a lot of fun, but it is not nearly the on the level of simulation as you are getting in the Joe Balkowski Korean War. So Mo from Mo's Game Table is finally here. Mo, thanks for stopping by. I'm not sure about St. Lo because I've never looked at that, but it's definitely not the same as Omaha Beach yet. I can tell you because I've got that. I could tell you that. So St. Lo, I have no idea. I think Compass is redoing St. Lo as well. I'm not sure about that. Mo, where's our Joe Balkowski Fleet games? from Compass. Let us know what the status is on that. Next up is the unsurprising next step, where I'm going to say a lot of exactly the same things I said about the Korean War game. This is Vietnam 1965 to 75 from Victory Games. This was released in 1984 and redone in a very minimally changed version by GMT, other than the graphics. The graphics are hugely upgraded. They made a couple of real small tweaks in the game, but that's it. It's not a reimagining. This is an amazing game. It's also a huge project to play. Unlike the Korean War, which you can play in a day without much trouble, this is a long term. If you're playing the campaign, there are scenarios in it as well. If you are going to play through the campaign, be prepared for a major time investment, like a couple 100-hour type of time investment. In addition, you may find that some player personality types may not gel with the game or with playing the North Vietnamese or communist players specifically. And you might find that many American players will be super duper frustrated by it. Nevertheless, this is another one of those Victory Games things that's like nobody's ever really even tried to do a game like this since then. It is an incredibly robust, well-developed, and I'm aware that it's got some ahistoricity problems thanks to the relative lack of good information about Vietnam, about the conflict, that was available when Nick Karp, the designer, was designing it. But nevertheless, despite those idiosyncrasies, this is the definitive game. Like Joe Balkowski's Korean War is the definitive game on that conflict. This is the definitive game on the Vietnam War at its scale. I should add that it is a quite heavy war game, and again, it's heavier than the Korean War. Let me put it that way. It also requires more bookkeeping because there's a huge hidden information component here. This is just an amazing game, and again, the definitive game on its topic at its scale. As Mo points out, all right, let's see here. As Mo points out, all right, so Blade Series is they're still working on it. Whatever, just shut up and take my money type of situation. Mike Reed says that GMT nailed the reprint. Graphics and quality were brought up to the capabilities of 2020s, but the game didn't change much at all. Yeah, I mean, they worked in the errata and made a couple of really small tweaks. The mission statement for this, Mitch Land was the developer on the GMT version. The mission statement was this to make absolutely minimal changes. So other than to just update it and incorporate the known issues and stuff like that. The original, I think, but there was a foreign reprint that's in stock at Compass, and then Compass is bringing it back out. There is paperwork in this, I will tell you. That does not bother me, but that will, some people hate that. Let me put it that way. All right, so Rolling Thunder by Steve Weiss and Group 3 Games, 1985. Good catch on that. Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to support this statement of Mo's as well. I've got a pretty high opinion of Mitch as both a designer and developer. So I feel very nasal here tonight for some reason. It's probably just pollen. It's not going to be. There's no sense in making it that complicated. All right, so moving on from Vietnam, which, believe it or not, is not the last one. Washington's Crossing. This is a game by Roger Miller. It is from Revolution Games, and it is, on the cover, it says it's the first in a series. There's never been a follow-up to it. That's unfortunate. This is one of the rarest of rare gems, an operational American Revolution game, inspired directly, per Roger, by great campaigns of the American Civil War. That said, it's not like a straight treatment of GCACW in the Revolution. There's more changes than that. This is a really interesting looking game. I have this. I definitely want to play this. This is a game that I think was warmly received, and Roger hasn't followed up on it because he's busy running Revolution Games. I would love to see somebody else take this particular ball and run with it. I would be happy to support this kind of effort. I am a huge operational person. I am becoming more interested in American Revolution, and I would absolutely love to see this series continued. Give me the whole damn war in operational format. I'm fine with that. I mean, maybe that's not a reasonable ask, but there you go. All right, and the very last game on the list is French and Indian War, Wilderness War by Volko Ruhnke. This is a 2001 release by Volko. And this is a really interesting game for a number of reasons. Superficially, if you look at it, it looks like a point-to-point card-driven game with all of the standard features that you would expect in a point-to-point card-driven game along the lines of A For the People or something like that. But this is also the game that launched Volko's career as a war game designer, and I think we can all agree that that's turned out to be somewhat of a big deal at this point. And it's supposed to be a really, really strong game on its own. This is on my list of things to pick up. I didn't miss War for America. I just can't accommodate more. So my target number of games for these shows is going to be somewhere between 20 and 25, and I can't include everything. I could do a whole show on American Revolution, in which case War for America is definitely going to show up on that list of games that are, important to talk about. But I can't catch them all. So these are highlights, not necessarily surveys, right? All right, so Perfidious Albion mentions Speed of Heat, which has replaced Air War for the tactical Air War subject, though Downtown was awesome. So Downtown is one of those Lee Birmingham Wood family, somewhat operationally, I'm making words up here. It's more of a hybrid. There's tactical elements and operational elements in it. Red Storm is like this as well. The Burning Blue is like this. I think less so. I think Burning Blue is more operational. There's a whole bunch of these. So Bill Simone, thanks so much for the, you're not leaving. So thanks for not leaving. Marty says that Wilderness War is still one of the best CDGs of all time. Great historical feel, minimal rules overhead. Yeah, I got to play this. It's on my list. I'll probably pick this up at some point. I'm assuming I don't have it already. I'm probably right about that. Perfidious Albion says it's a perfect tournament game on the subject. Bayonets and Tomahawks is another one that just came out in the last few years. Very, very warmly received. And I haven't played it. Nor have I particularly looked at it. So it got pushed off the list based on this and some other stuff that I had more to say about, right? Central America is another interesting one. I think this is another Victory Games thing that maybe isn't as well regarded or well remembered as it deserves to be. I think there's some interesting looking things going on in Central America, personally. No, Jeff, I feel exactly the opposite way. I specifically picked up War for two reasons. One, I've been a follower of Gilbert's for years, and I love Gilbert's YouTube stuff. But the other thing is, it's because that Gilbert is Canadian that I was super interested in this game, because I'd love to have a game on the American Revolution from somebody who's not an American, right? Give me the British or Canadian perspective on that. I think that's great. Now, that's not really how Gilbert sold it, but I mean, that to me was super interesting. Mean Joe Green says, if we get the right one here, one American war that almost happened was Napoleon trying to retake North America from Britain with a weak United States. Yeah, Napoleon had his hands full at the time. I mean, so almost, I mean, this is a hypothetical, obviously, but almost happened is probably not. Unless 1805 happens very differently than it did historically. Let me put it that way. I have seen the game called Hill of Doves. Mr. Madison's War is another game about the War of 1812, actually, and it's also pretty well regarded. So, all right. Mark says Wilderness War and Bayonets and Tomahawks toss-up. I think the chances of me playing Bayonets and Tomahawks are really, really super high, because I might just stumble across a game at a convention. We actually talked about, Joe Miranda's Nicaragua game a couple of times. One It came up during our interview with Joe Miranda, so go check that out. It's also come up in interviews that we've done with Volko and Brian Train as an influence on their games about counterinsurgency topics. So very interesting, and I would go so far as to say influential S&T game out of Joe Miranda. And we did mention this on the Best of S&T, the 3W and DSR years as well. Philippine-American War, good call, actually, which was kind of an outgrowth of the Spanish-American War. This was a conflict in which Blackjack Pershing both made his military reputation and committed many atrocities against the Philippine people. So there's that. Central America is not strictly, and it's hypothetical, and I stayed away from hypothetical, or, well, at least it's partly hypothetical. Well, I mean, this was such a mess, man. Let's say that Napoleon's handling of Haiti specifically was not his finest moment, to say the least. There you go. Napoleon. Remember, Napoleon was the one who sold the Louisiana territory to Thomas Jefferson too, because he needed money to pay for his wars in Europe. So, wars in North America that didn't happen could be a topic, and in fact, hypothetical stuff in general could be a topic. I mean, I could do there's enough games for me to do an entire show on Axis Wins World War II alternate history games, all of which I could probably fill that entire list with Tybomba designs. Mark says that, quite rightly, that Central America has historical scenarios. Yes, I think there's some hypotheticals in there as well. I haven't played it, but I do have it. So thank you for the person that sent that to me. It's, a lot of the victory games have reasonably thick rules. This is one that I can, in principle anyway, yank off the shelf. Except that the shelf is airtight. So I had to pull 2 games off to get it down. I think this is quite a handsome game, to be completely honest. It's another one I got to go through here. I think this is a pretty attractive map. I think the counters are perfectly good. Certainly, I have some issues with some victory games counters, but this isn't really one of them. But if you look at the paper in here, here's players charts. It's like an 860, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's an 8-page charts and tables booklet. So you got 2 of those. You got 2 player cards that track stuff, and you got 3 huge booklets. They're not huge, but the rule book is, where's the page number? Why are there no page numbers on this thing? Okay, I see it. 64-page rule book, 68-page scenario book, 40-page intervention game rules of play. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. So this is for the serious, the person to whom this topic is of really high interest. And it is, remember we talked about soft war games earlier? This is not that, okay? This is a game that you are definitely going to need to be super engaged with the topic to really get into, just because of the level of detail that it's obviously treated with. Let me put it that way. All right, so Objective Moscow. That's a hypothetical. I've got it as well. Thank you. You know who you are. It's up top. I'm gonna probably order some empty SPI. I'll throw this out there. If anybody has a soapbox, Objective Moscow. I don't want the game. I just want the box for Objective Moscow or War in the Pacific. If you have like boxes where the contents are trashed, but the box itself is in good shape, please let me know. You never know. This is true, but they were interdependent as well. So that when Haiti passed from direct French control, there wasn't any point in hanging on to the Louisiana territories at that point either, because it wasn't bringing the French in any money. So Central America is for the grog. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, actually, Mark, a couple people have mentioned this, the scenario generator. I'd love to get into that. I think I could seriously get into that game, actually. So the amount of money that Royalist France was bringing in via Haiti was just absolutely crazy. It was one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable single colony anywhere in the world, which I'm sure made the British very unhappy because it wasn't theirs. They were growing mostly sugar, and a little bit of tobacco, and I think one other thing. It might have even been cotton. I'm not sure, but a lot of it was sugar. So I am not talking about the flats. I'm talking about the soapboxes. If anybody's got extra soapboxes for these, I'm aware I could make them, but I don't really want to make them if I don't have to. Another thing here, though, is this is like an actual conflict. I don't know much about it. This is like an actual conflict that happened in Central America in the whenever that was. There's not a lot of games on it. There's none. I think one of the Brief Border Wars scenarios covers the soccer war, but Central America covers it too. So again, if you're interested in it, in these Central American conflicts, Central America by Victory Games is something maybe you want, but I didn't include it here because, I felt like there was more than enough of conflicts that more people will connect to. Let me put it that way. The football war. There you go. There you go. All right, let me pull this down. And we can. Oh, we're after 10, actually. So, folks, we'll have a show with Dan tomorrow. Last week's show was the Wargame Trivia Night show. We've got some ideas that we're researching to make that a little better run, because I think it's an awesome idea, and I think we will do it again, and we will continue to fiddle with the format and the tools until we get it done right. So, this is true too. Alan Salazar mentions the S&T game about Pancho Villa. I don't know a lot about that. That's one of the reasons why it wasn't on the list. And not everything can make the list, right? This is not an attempt to say these are the best games on any of their topics, although I think a couple of them are, and I pointed those out where I think they were. I think there's no direct competition over best Korean war game with the Joe Belkowski Korean War, or best, assuming you're willing to accept the relatively high complexity and playtime. I think there's nothing comparable to the Nick Karp Vietnam either. So in any case, we will be on the show on the air live tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern with Dan, and hopefully we will have a second video this week as well, although I don't have any actual news incoming as far as I'm aware. The Sound of Drums iLow should be here. I've gotten a shipping notification, but there's been no activity on the tracking label, so what that smells like to me, since I'm the UPS and USPS tracking oracle here, I feel like I'm reading the chicken on entrails. I interpret that to mean that they printed all the shipping labels at once and they're boxing them up and shipping them out as they're able to. So it'll sooner or later be here, and we'll do an unboxing of it when it gets here. As far as I'm aware, that's the next unboxing thing that's like unboxable thing that's coming in. So you might not see anything this week. I do have a backlog, but it's a question of whether I'm going to get it done or not. So I want to thank everybody for stopping out tonight. Once again, everybody for supporting the show. Remember that you are supporting the show just by being here, and I really appreciate it. There's also the Noble Knight affiliate link. You can help the channel out by using that Noble Knight affiliate link. It's in the video description. You do that, buy what you want. You were going to buy it anyway, and I will get a little kickback in the form of store credit, which makes me very happy. And we are working our way towards a second game in the finished trilogy series, which hopefully will happen soon. So once again, everybody have a great rest of the night. We'll see you all again soon. Well, that's screwed up. That's unfortunate. So everybody have a great rest of the night. We'll see you all again soon, and we'll fix the outro for next week.